Diamond Matt channel, welcome. Right, this video is a celebratory one, banzai, because the channel has surpassed 1 million views in total, and also I've got a video that's about to go over 100,000 views, and my first video to do so. So I want to mark the occasion a little bit by doing a video that would normally be for patrons only, but this one's going to be free. It's going to be on YouTube, so it'll give people a taste of what the patrons usually get to see. If you become a patron, you get a shout out on the next video, next upload after you join, and then you get access to all new videos or future videos 2 weeks before they go live on YouTube, and then also you get access to all the full instructional guides. So they're like 1 hour up to 2 hours, 2.5 I think I've reached sometimes, really in-depth jewelry making tutorials, always making one thing specifically, and then I'll just go through the whole process showing you how to make it start to finish, all handmade. So talking to new patrons, I've got James Dalton just joined today. Thank you very much, James. Yeah, financial support really does enable me to continue the channel, so very grateful to the patrons and grateful to all the people that watch as well and click like and subscribe, and even commenting on the videos helps the channel grow. So yeah, let's get into it. So what we're doing today is converting a simple wedding band into a single stone ring, and the idea to do this, I've not done it before, it's a little bit experimental, but the idea to do this came from a full instructional guide I made recently about making a trillion cut stone, single stone ring, and there's a way I put claws on the side and bent them down underneath. I had the idea to do this. You could actually take that head and as a single part and just modify it to be able to plonk it onto a wedding band, and then the claws will go down. It'll look like a nicely made finished ring. A very quick, easy way to make a single stone ring. So anyway, I'm going to try it out today and yeah, show you how to do it as well. So I'm not starting from square one, we're starting from having a wedding band. So it's almost as though customers come to you and ask what you can do with their ring. They've got a bit of money to spend, they've got a ring, can they use the gold or can it be modified in some way? And you can say, yes, you can. We can actually just convert your existing wedding band into a single stone ring if you want, if that's what you want. It's a cheapskate way to get an engagement ring, perhaps. Anyway, so I've got a wedding band already made. I'm assuming if you're going to have a go at this, you know how to make a wedding band. If not, I did do a video in the past. I'll put a link to it on the screen now. And yeah, you can check that out. But basically, it's a strip of metal turned up into a circle, soldered up, and then tapped and filed and papered, and you end up with that. It's not a big job at all. And the stone we're using to make this ring is moissanite. This stone is featured on the channel before, a couple of years ago. I did a professional jeweler's first reaction to moissanite video. Upset loads of people, even to this day. I'm getting comments on that video talking about, I don't know what I'm talking about, can't believe I'm a professional jeweler, never seen moissanite before. Do you know why? A simple answer to that, I used to work in a very exclusive, expensive jewelers, and rich people, it seems, don't bother with moissanite, they get diamonds. So that's why I never got my hands on a moissanite, because I was always working on diamonds. I think customers with money won't bother with the alternatives, they just go straight to diamond. Anyway, so yeah, still not impressed with the moissanite, but anyway, it's good enough to make a piece of jewellery with. It has its place in the trade. I do appreciate people like something nice and sparkly to wear, and it's a hard stone, good for jewellery, a lower cost alternative to diamond, but it compares itself with a top quality diamonds. It is not. Anyway, so yeah, I'm going to be using this stone. So I've got a simple wedding band. I'll just give you the measurements of my wedding band, but I'm thinking just anything kind of thin-ish. This is not even that thin. This is 1.6 wide and depth, a little bit chunky, 1.5 deep as well. It's a little bit on the heavy side, but like a regular women's wedding band basically will work with what I've got in mind today. So I've just been preparing metal for the next stage. What I decided to do is just make it in a really basic way, and then it's up to you if you want to do a more fancy version. Like I've just got a bit of square wire there for the stone to sit on, about a mil, call it. But if you want to do one, like you could make that D section, like put it through the D shape in your rolling mills, and then that rounded section can go around the outside. It might look quite nice. But I'm just going to stick with square. If you haven't got, I use my square draw plates, I've got some recently. You don't actually need them to get square wire. I can put a link on the screen now, and I'll show you a video I did how to use your rolling mills and parallel pliers to turn like round wire into square wire. It works really well. For years didn't have square draw plates, only because I needed loads and loads of square wire recently. I decided to get some draw plates to get that, make it easier for myself. Anyway, so yeah. 1 mil square wire I'm using, keeping it basic, and yeah, let's turn this up and get a little thing for the stone to sit on. So imagining the stone from the side does that, yeah. The bottom half goes to a point. The bezel we're making for it, for the stone to sit on, I want mine, like I usually do in my videos, I like my stone sitting quite low. So looking down, straight down on the stone, when it's sat in the bezel, you can't see any metal around the outside of the stone, but it is just sort of under the girdle. You can go smaller. The smaller you go, the higher the stone is going to sit in that, because imagine that going down into a circle. If it's a small hole, it can't go down very far, but if it's a big hole, it can go down a bit more. So I'm making mine more on the big side to get the stone dropping down, but you can only go so far because you don't want to be able to see metal around the outside of the stone looking down on it. What I always do is, before I start turning up a bit of metal for a stone to sit in, I just look at the stone and put my metal over it, and it just gives you a bit of a head start, a rough idea on how tightly you need to curve it. Obviously you're going to be checking it as you go along, but it just gives me a bit of an idea of what to do. So I just do a little bit like that on my metal and then just compare it to the stone. Okay, yeah, right, that's not enough, it's too much, whatever. I just know what to do as I'm proceeding. So I curl up the metal a bit and then check the stone, see if I like the curvature. Hasn't got to be perfectly round, not at all, because we're going to put it in the collet block and bang it into shape. Things can size up a little bit on you as well doing that, so I don't know, there's an element of just doing it by feel, but then at the same time, by using the tools to tap it around, you end up changing it a little bit again, so you could almost make it a bit big on purpose. I never do that, but at the same time, I know what comes next when using certain tools, so I don't know, up to you, however you want to work. So get that, it's about right. It's not perfect, but it's about right. What I tend to do is scissor things out of alignment on purpose. Only just, don't want to twist it right out of shape. Then I can continue curling it around, because that first little bit is always a bit straight. It's never really any good. So I curve it right past that, probably be cutting it around about there. Put the stone on, a little bit too big, perfect, that's fine. That means I can cut it and reshape it and not worry about it going too small. Yeah, cool, so get to that stage, cut it through, then we'll work on it a bit more. So you could thread your saw blade through, cut it from the inside. I sort of like the idea, but in practice it doesn't suit me, because I like watching what I'm doing really closely, and you can just see it a bit better when you cut it from the outside. Also, I feel like I've got more control over the saw blade. So I just pinch it together, parallel pliers, just cut straight down. Anyway, just little things like that. You find your own way, what suits you best on how to work. I don't make these videos trying to really convince people to work the way I work. I'm just showing you what works for me, and you can take it or leave it, or use it, adapt it, improve it, whatever you want. So checking with the stone again. That's a bit wobbly. It's just turned up by hand. It's been twisted out of shape and then twisted back into shape again. So it needs tapping flat. It needs making perfectly round. It's too big. So anyway, I don't know what to do just from looking at it with the stone anyway. So I'll cut a bit out and then I'll get the join really tight and nice, then I'll tap it around and get it good. All my videos always go on about solder joins being really tight and strong on ring shanks, but it's really, really important on collets as well. Collets like really structural part of the setting, so if you're setting like a 10 grand D coloured diamond, you want it to be really strong as possible, really neat, and also you don't want to see the join either, so that's another reason to get the join like really tight and good. So yeah, take your time with getting the joins right. It seems like a small, delicate one. You could get away with maybe it just having extra soldering or something to fill up a gap, but I think it's more important than even a ring, the shank join after sizing or something, because it's just such a structurally important part of the ring. But also it's just next to the stone as well, so if you are, after polishing, you can see a little solder line, customer's going to notice that and not like it, I'm sure. I'll put a claw over this solder joint anyway, so that eliminates that risk of it showing up, but still you want it good. So this comes with experience, knowing seeing how much it is too big, and then knowing how much to cut out to size it down. My advice is just do very small amounts and get it going. It's better to chop it 2, 3, 4 times, adjust it a little bit until it's right, rather than just taking out a big chunk and then finding out it's too small, and then you've got to start again. You haven't got enough wire, so then you've got to do a melt up and then pull down, go down to the mills, and then pull down a load of new wire. It can be a massive step backwards if you accidentally cut something too small. And ask me how I know this, because it's happened to me. Nothing like an energy boost of trying to hide the mistake you made, working really hard, trying to get back to where you were as quick as possible before anyone notices. So yeah, not quite enough. I think if I cut out the same amount again, I'll be alright with this. I just soldered it up, and I thought to mention you probably should use hard solder. You haven't got to. I mean, there's literally a big chunk of my entire career. There was like years where I just didn't use hard solder. I just used to use medium for everything. And apart from 1700 and platinum, yeah, I used to use medium for everything, just to make a whole ring, just all out of medium. The only time I was using easy solder was when I was like working next to stones that already set, so I had to get it soldered without the heat getting too high. But yeah, it's totally possible just to use medium for everything. Easy tends to not flood nicely. Sometimes it just melts and just doesn't go in the joint. I don't know why. Like, it might be some problem with the flux or a bit of dirt or something, but I don't know. It happened to me multiple times. Just easy solder would sit on the joint and then just stay in a little ball. It just wouldn't flood. So I'm having weird problems with it. That was in 18 karat white gold. Then hard, I just felt like it was just unnecessarily just added a layer of an extra level of difficulty, and just medium was just, it would flood nicely, it would go where I wanted it to, and nice control. So I just used medium for everything. It was just the easiest way to work making jewellery for me. But in recent years, especially coming here and making things in silver, it's a good idea to work with all three grades of solder. So initial solders, getting collets joined up and stuff, definitely worth using hard if you've got it, and then go to medium for the claws, or even easy, I don't know, whatever you want. But yeah, your initial solders, I would recommend using hard solder. So what do you do when you've got this tool but there's nothing really suiting perfectly what you need? There are other things you can do, like the back of your drawer plate might have tapering holes. They don't always taper down on the back, but there'll be different sizes that might be useful to you. Or I've used this plenty of time as well, just dome in block. They're different size things on there. Not as good though. It's nice if you can use this. So I'm actually going to battle on with this. I'm just going to put it in the one that's too big, but then obviously use that to tap it down. I don't really like doing it though. It seems to make things bigger. I want to just be able to tap it down into one of these cones with my hammer. But got to do what I've got to do. So I'm just going to tap this. If you're using this, I would recommend making sure it's at least flat first of all, and then also where you've soldered it, if there's a bit of a lump on the outside, that can balls up how it works. So file that off if there's a little bit of a lump. I just touch mine with a needle file just to get it flat, then put it in the best possible one. Next tip is it's got to be flat. If you bang down on it and it's tilted, it's going to be a weird shape. So make sure this tool is perfectly vertical, and make sure whatever you're banging in there is perfectly horizontal. And then watch it as well while you're tapping it. A thin little bit of silver like that won't take any strength at all to distort it beyond what you want. Also, this is possibly a bit too padded for that job. If you've only got to tap something a few times gently on a metal block with no vibration, it's going to have more of an effect when you tap it with your hammer. Like if you put it on something like that's a bit too spongy, it takes the sound out nicely, but on tapping something into shape, not always great having all the shock removed from it. So to tidy it up, first thing I'm thinking is to get the inside nice. I've got these ball burrs. This one's a bit small, this one's a slightly big. It's nice if you've got one that just doesn't quite go in, or you can push it in, it touches the sides, because then you haven't got to move it around and risk it not being round. I think this one's going to cut in there nicely. And that's a bit big. It's a bit big, and there's a danger of it spinning, hitting my fingers. That's too blunt, I can't use that. Right, yeah, that's a shame. So I'm going to look for something that's the right size. And you haven't got to use a round burr. any kind of setting burr or bud phrase. The ball burrs and the setting burrs seem to be quite good because they go up quite accurately. Oh, this is a nice one. Yeah, I'm using this one. It just slides through with a bit of resistance. It's just faster as well if you can get one the correct size, as long as you don't spend too much time looking for it. The idea is I just want it nice and round, nice even smooth surface around the inside. Done. The sides, again, I just hold it with my fingertips, just file it a bit with a needle file and rotate it, just go around it. I've got a lump of solder there, so I'm considering that as I work around it and throwing it around. Do both sides, obviously. Again, it's not actually the, it's what happens when you're making jewellery. You might concentrate on the top where the stone sits, but actually, when it's finished, the bottom half is going to show up more. So it's almost more important that it looks better from under. Well, that's a two-sided thing at the moment. We've got to choose one side the stone's going to sit. So if you've got a bit of a weird shape showing, I would set the stone into that side because we can phrase it out, get the stone dropping down into it. That can all get hidden away, and then you've got your nice parallel-sided, perfectly circular one showing from underneath. That's what I would recommend. Yeah, I think this side I've got a little bit of a kink where the solder joint is. This will be my top. The other side is not there. Looks better from this side. It's typical experience when you start filing and cutting and papering and stuff. You sort of realise certain things about the shape of it that were hidden before. There's no harm in going back to your tool and tapping it a little bit again. Just do whatever you got to do to make it look nice. Stick. By the way, I'm just abusing my fingertips because there's only one. If I had to do a few of these, or a load of them certainly, I would find a way to hold it without destroying my fingertips. If it's alright with just one. So looking much better already, but then we'll go around the outside next. And then the outside, finally, I will hold it gently in my parallel pliers. Just use cylinder phrase to go around there. Don't want to have to crush it, so being very gentle. Again, working slowly and patiently, rather than trying to really grind into it. So have a close look at it. You might find there's one side better than the other. This is my bad side. You can see where the joint is. Just sort of didn't quite go perfectly round where the joint is, like coming out a little bit. And this side's just much better. So that'll be my underneath. So that'll go on the ring that way, so it looks as nice as possible. This side's all going to be hidden by the stone. I'm about to phrase it out anyway as well. So working with my stone again, checking it out. I put that in the little bezel we made. Hello. Put that in the little bezel we made. You can see the bottom of the stone sticking out. Putting that on the side of the ring. It's going to go in the shank already quite a bit. So no, it's a good job I didn't phrase it out because I would have made the stone lower. That's what I mean. I would have been guessing. I hadn't done this test yet. So now it's all papered, filed and papered. We've got the true dimensions. It'll go on the ring. Then you can start testing for depths and stuff. So I've got to leave that as it is. And I was almost thinking earlier to put a little step in the ring, file a little flat on it, or put little steps in so that clicks in really strong. But I don't think you need to. It's unnecessary work unless you've got to bring it down lower for some reason. I don't think you need to. That's going to be quite strong soldered on there like that. And then we've got the claws going down the side, joined into a shank as well. So it's going to be really strong even without putting any kind of flat on the ring, which is good news. It just means less work. You can do it quicker and easier. So next, ring's ready, that's ready. I've got to pull down some wire, so I'll do that, and then we'll put the claws on it, doing 4 claws. So now it comes to marking out 4 points where your corners have got to sit. And I'm always a little bit, I don't really know what to say, because I just do it by eye. I've just learned over the years just to line it up with my saw blade. I've got a way of looking at it and just putting my saw blade over it and just what looks right. Other options, if you're not really ready for that yet, if you get a template with circles, and these have got 4 corners marked out on it, these are not great. To actually put that on a template and try and mark by hand where the points are. It never really works. You can't really mark them accurately. You can't really hold it in position nicely and do it. But they are good for doing it by eye, or putting marks on by eye and then checking it with this. Sort of useful, but not great. Another option you've got is if you've got a square punch, you can put that, I'd literally just put that in one of these, so it's holding still, and then with that perfectly vertical, just give it a gentle tap. It's quite good doing that, but still not perfect. It's not foolproof because the marks are on the inside. You've got to cut it from the outside, and it's just the most minimum amounts, and it looks wrong. So it's still got to work really carefully and quite skillfully to transfer those marks perfectly to the outside. So you are basically stuck doing it by eye. I'll show you what I do. So remember I said to check if you've got a favourite side, like a good side and a bad side. This is my good side, so that's going underneath. This is my bad side, just slightly more wobbly. Saw blade in your frame. That's a perfect straight line. It's very useful. Use it a lot for lining things up. A circle is quite good because it's quite easy to put that across the middle. Quite easy to put that across the middle, and you end up with like two semicircles, so it's quite clear to see when one side is bigger than the other. So you can line up halfway quite quickly and easily. So what I do is marking on the side where the stone's going to be put in and sort of phrased in. Well, I'm not phrasing mine because mine's already a bit too low. I would just, I'm not actually really doing this now, I'm just going to go through the motion to show you. I would just not cutting into it, but you can just saw up, and you can put little lines on there. I don't know if I can show it on camera. Like it's just sort of scratching a clean line. And then if I'm happy with that, try and get in the middle again. So you can get four marks on there if you wanted before you did any cutting at all. Then get a template and like check them out, line them up. If there's a little bit different, perhaps you can scratch, get something sharp, scratch a little line, just move them around a little bit. But like I say, just the minimum amounts makes things look wrong. You've got to work really carefully getting claws in the correct position. And four on a circle is relatively easy, so it's good to practice doing this on this kind of thing. Yeah, even though I've got a few of these tools to help me get it accurate, I am mostly just still doing it by eye, like just by lining up my saw blade and putting little marks on. And then just, I guess I just advise just to keep checking it and comparing it. Don't just mark it and then assume that's correct and you're going to be fine. Every cut you do, you have to compare it to what you've just done and see if it's going wrong at all. So you do have options of putting a cut in, slightly to one side, you can knock it across a little bit. You work with a thin saw blade, helps you get accuracy better. Don't know, good luck. it's just I can't teach you experience. You just got to try these things and practice it, and then you get good at it. So when I actually really do this now, one thing I forgot to mention is I like to put a claw over the solder join. That way it's under a claw, so it's completely hidden, so you ain't got to worry about polishing any lines showing up, or don't have to worry about where it is. So I can see where mine is because my join, the inner edge of mine goes to a little point on the inside, on one side, so that's why I know where it is. So I can aim for that. But if not, I would have perhaps heated it up gently so I can see that solder join, because you know, under heat, especially silver, you heat it up, it's like it oxidizes different under heat, so you can see it quite clearly. But I think it works in all metals, not so much in platinum, but still a little bit. But silver, really easy to find it if you just heat it up a little bit. Anyway, I can see mine. So starting on that, going down the middle, just scratching a gentle line. So I think I'm trying to look at the whole thing at once. So I'm making sure it's going down the middle, and I'm looking at the semicircles either side of my saw blade. So I'll draw it on there, and then what I do is I rotate it and look around and just see if I like how it's looking. Is it still looking halfway? Because you get these weird illusions happening, like you might turn it side to side and it doesn't look like it's going halfway across anymore. So I've got one spot where I start from, that's the solder join bit. If it was wrong anyway, I would leave the solder join one where it is and then just move the bottom one left or right. But I think that's quite good, quite happy with that. So now that is my guide. I would line that up perfectly horizontal and then put my saw blade and go again vertically. I always work up and down, marking them out, and then I rotate it so I can work up and down for the next one. don't try and hold your saw blade in weird positions and do it. You want to work really carefully. So now my marks are horizontal, saw blade's vertical, going down again, working the same. It's probably easier second one because you've now got these. If you're happy with these and you trust them, these are now a guide. So you've got your saw blade down the middle, your semicircles either side of it, and then also you've got these kind of marks there, so that'll give you quarter sections. So I actually think there's a little bit extra help to getting the last one correct. Doesn't end there though. Even if I gave you one perfectly marked out, it still takes a lot of care and skill to actually transfer it into a cut in the correct position, because like I keep saying, just the smallest amount makes it look wrong. So if you're cutting and your saw blade's just like there, or slightly tilted, it looks terrible, and then you've got to find out why it looks terrible. It's not always obvious. So take your time at this stage, getting it good. So there's my 4 marks. I don't know if you can see, where was it? I did actually make an adjustment on one of my first lines. It's just slightly thicker. Look, I'd like pulled it across. You see that's thicker than that one. Just marked to the side of it slightly, just from rotating it. Didn't really like it after seeing my second lines next to it. Anyway, so I'm trying to be really good. That's why I struggle with this and say you've got to be careful. Other jewellers might just say, it's easy, just top, bottom, left, right, whatever. That's a bit slapdash. I'm trying to be really good. That's why I'm saying you've got to be really careful with this. I'm sort of training you up to be good. So anyway, I'm going to have a closer look. It's one of those things, it's a simple idea to mark top, bottom, left, right around a circle, but to do it well, it's actually quite difficult. So these templates, that's what I said, they're not so good for trying to mark it, but for testing what you've done, they are pretty good. If you can find one the correct size, it fits in this one best. An element of getting it sitting centrally as well, but my marks are not bad, look. Pretty good. That one looks down. These look good. That one looks down slightly. Alright, as for doing the dreaded cutting the claws, starting on the one that I started the mark with over the solder joint, that mark I don't want to move. They're all based from where that one is. And I wanted to mention, I just realised I do this, when I'm making the marks, my solder joint's on the top there, so I'll start with the top and then mark the bottom one. When I'm doing the cuts, I start with the bottom one just because it's more convenient for the way you hold it and the angle of the saw blade and stuff. So I'm using my finger on the saw blade, really carefully line it up again as though I was about to mark it. So it's touching the top one, perfectly in line with that. Rock the blade back so it goes over the bottom one. Make sure you're happy with everything. Sort of still checking it if it's nice and halfway. And now it's sort of gripped on there with the teeth. So just carefully hold on to it tight so it doesn't move. There you go, just put a little nick in it. So with that little nick, I'll be checking that on my line, and then if I like it, put my saw blade back in that nick. Again, rocking it up over checking the semicircles either side of my saw frame, putting it back on the line. I'll cut up. Oh, that moved. Can't do this and talk at the same time. There you go. So I'll just show you it on this side, touching it over the top one, put my blade down the middle, checking my semicircles again. The blade is being supported by my finger. Just carefully put a little nick in there. That's why I like a fresh, clean, a fresh, sharp saw blade, because you can put a mark in the metal with less effort. And just have a close look at it as well. That's a bit too close. It is not bad, mate. I'm gonna check it again on my, where's that gone? My template thing. So what I do is I give it a buff with a fine bit of paper, fine buff stick, and then get sort of marks off it, and then I check it again on this. I think that's going to be good enough. It's rotate it a little bit. There you go, it's a bit better, isn't it? It's not bad. It's not perfect, but they never are. It's handmade. So anyway, it's good enough to put claws on. It should line up quite nicely at that level. At least I know I've got a starting point, which is good. So just try and stick to that best I can. If if I made it and I know one's wrong, and I've got the mindset of thinking, oh, I'll correct it at the next stage, I'll correct it at the next stage, it never works out. Try and get it right at every stage, and it makes the next step much easier. So yeah, let's. I got to make some wire. That'll probably be the end of the day. I'll make some wire, and then tomorrow get on with putting the claws on. Okay, next day. Let's get going. How's my hair? Terrible as usual. Fine. Okay, so this little bezel's done. I've got some wire. This wire is, I think it was a mil. Just so you know what I'm doing. Doesn't mean you've got to do this, but yeah, 1 mil. My wire, straight bit of wire. Enough for 4 claws. My idea is they're going to go, I've made it at a size where they can go parallel on my bezel. If you made a really small bezel for your stone, you then have to start putting it in funny angles to get it to hit the stone at the correct distance. Mine going on straight on the parallel sides, and then the idea is immediately after the bezel we're going to bend it down, so it's parallel and then just going to bend it to a point. They're all going to meet in a point underneath the stone. Rather than the way it used to work, or the way I was told to work, was to put them on individually. I enjoy making little U-shapes. I find it quicker and easier. So I'm going to advise you do that too. So let's do some couple of U-shapes, put them on. Okay, no, wait. Getting ahead of myself. I've got the wire for the claws, but this is not fully prepared for the claws yet. We need to cut down from the marks we made and then phrase it out. Forgot about that. So let's do that next, then we'll put the claws on. Again, with the thin, sharp saw blade, sometimes it's nice to have a fresh one. It's not essential, but there's a bit of a risk to that, because some saw blades, as you may be aware, just want to cut wrong. They want to turn off and go wonky. So it is a bit of a risk. If you've got one that's proved itself trustworthy, maybe probably better to stick with that, even if it's a little bit blunt. So to change my mind as I keep talking. Just get a saw blade you trust, use that. Maybe a new one's too risky. The idea is you want to do this really accurately, so it's important to get it right. I'm trying to think how I would normally hold it. Yeah, maybe going across the top. I was thinking to do it that way, but it's probably easier to hold and see what you're doing if you work on the top one. So I'm holding mine in parallel pliers. I just lock that in my groove. I'm happy with my grooves. I just sort of checked them again. They all look lined up pretty well. So now I'm just going to carefully rock that over the top and just be careful to keep everything straight. So I'm looking at that flat as a horizontal in front of me and just have my blade perfectly vertical to that. That's kind of how I line things up. Oops. So yeah, start with a really minor little cut. One last look before I dedicate this cut. Even if you do this cut, you can still move it around. Just like the nicks, you can put a little edge to your saw blade left or right. You can still do that at this stage as well, even if you put a cut down the side, you don't like it for any reason. Usually it's all right if you've just been checking it and checking it and checking it the whole time. By the time you get to this stage, they're usually pretty trustworthy. Whoop. Didn't like the way that moved. There you go. I sawed up, which cuts gently into the metal, and then when I add a bit of a groove to sit in comfortably, and then I pull down, which obviously cuts in a bit more severely. So checking it again. Just every time I do something, I check it. You can see my cuts from the back now, so there's another opportunity to look at it and check it from a different angle. Then when you're happy with it, you commit to it a bit more by making it a bit deeper, but it's still really minor cuts. We've got to phrase it out. Then I do top, bottom, and then I'm doing left, right. So I work opposites always. So now you've got the cuts down the side. It's always good to turn it over, like I just buffed it with fine paper, just to get it fresh again. Yeah, have a look. You can see your little nicks now, so have a look, rotate it. It's usually a way where it looks good and a way it looks bad. So it should be relatively good if you've been checking it and making adjustments as you needed to up to this stage. But there's still plenty of opportunity to balls it up, because next we're going to cylinder phrase it. And as you're aware, I'm sure, they rotate, they spin, and as they cut, they try to sort of pull one way more than the other. So you've got to do this really carefully and make sure you're going straight in. The trick I do, same when I'm cutting into claws and stuff, I always sort of work, imagine a dot in the center, and I just phrase towards that. I don't just let it do what it wants, I'm actually actively pushing it towards the middle always, and that helps you get your grooves in the correct position and they don't start wandering about. It's good advice to start with a thin one, much thinner than what you need, because it's much more accurate to phrase into it and get the position correct with a thin one. And if you make a mistake, like the angle's slightly wrong or slightly left or right, you can pull it back across and you haven't then created a scoop on the side of where the claw is to that has to be filled up with solder. If you go straight to the same size as your claw, like this is 1 mil, if I get that slightly wrong, I've then got to pull it back into position. I've then created a space that where the claw goes has got to be filled up with solder. And even then, your claw might just accidentally go into the wrong position, and then you've got claws. So it's easier to make a mistake if you basically, it's a liability. Risk management, like I mentioned on my channel, just start with a thin one. You eliminate problems. It's just less work as well. You get it correct with a thin one, and then just open it up with the correct size one. It's a much cleaner, safer way to work, and probably quicker than going really carefully, going straight to the main size one. It eliminates risks, I think, is a better way to work. But saying that, if all you've got is the correct size one, totally possible. Just got to maybe slow down and be extra careful when doing it. Just do a little bit, check it, do a little bit, check it. Yeah, but easier, safer. Do it, start with a small one. So what I do next is I put the stone on my bezel and have a look at the sides where they end up. It's going to be smaller than the diameter of the girdle, but I want to know by how much, because I want that to be parallel, and then it's going to bend immediately after that bezel. But I need to know how much to phrase in. Mine is actually a little bit smaller than the girdle, so I've only got to phrase mine a little bit. If it was just the same size or just under, you have to phrase it in a little bit more. You can get away with phrasing it in more, but mine's already almost there in the correct position, so I'm just going to phrase mine in a little bit. Huh? What? What was that, Choco? What did you say? Ah, yeah, good point. Yeah, Choco says, make sure you do all 4 the same distance in. You've got to phrase them in the same amount. There's no good having like 3 claws the same and then 1 going in more. It's going to be a little bit of a problem on your stone. You can get away with it, but you end up having to sort of bend one claw out a little bit more or set them a bit differently. It's much more ideal if you just phrase them all in the same. So there's another reason to go extra careful, because if you start making mistakes on one, you have to start adjusting it, and it goes a little bit deeper, and you've got to pull it this way, it goes a little bit deeper, get the angle straight, it goes a little bit deeper. You can accidentally get your claws going in too much. So definitely part of this ring is quite important to get it accurate. So what I'm going to do is, I don't always do this, I just feel like doing it today. I'm just going to open it up a bit more, like my grooves with I've got a tri-square 3-sided needle file. I've got such a fine little cut to mark the claw. I don't really believe I can put my cylinder phrase in and then go straight down off it. So I'm just making it basically a bit wider, a bit bigger, a bit more of a groove for the cylinder burr to sit in. Risk management, eliminating problems before they happen. So now I'm a bit more confident with that going in there. Now I've checked it with my stone in there, so I know I've only got to go in a little bit. I've just got to concentrate. The claw's going on there parallel, so I've just got to concentrate on getting it nice and straight up and down. Don't just go through the motions of doing it, have a look after you've worked on it as well. Make sure they're not moving about a little bit. My advice is just spin it slowly, push gently, let the blades do the cutting rather than you pushing. Maybe a slightly worn out one might be safer, I don't know. It's a bit, see that, I wasn't concentrating. I think a fresh sharp one is more likely to stay in position and cut down exactly where you're holding it, but it's also more likely to grab and move out of the way. A bit of plus minus benefits of having a blunt one and a smooth one. Because a blunt one won't cut as well, so you might push down harder, so maybe it might move about more without you realising, but a sharp one will cut faster. It'll stay in position better, but it might be a bit grabby if you don't control it. Don't know. Just to see what happens when you try it. Might be different for everyone. So I'm just rotating them and going over them again, just making sure they're all the same. This one needs a lot more. Probably looks like I'm doing more work than I really am. This is so blunt, it's hardly cutting. Right, so there's a bigger groove now in there, so I'm going to move up to my correct size one. Let me just check that I picked up the correct one. Looking for a 1mm. Looking for a 1mm burr. No, this is a different one. 0.9. What happened there? It's this one. You can totally get away with putting a claw on with after phrasing it out with one slightly smaller diameter than your claw, or even slightly bigger. But for the best join, just to eke out a little bit more quality where possible, get it the same in there, and then cut it quickly into the correct position. And there's a cat jumped in front of the camera. Excuse me, give me. Oh, yo, don't touch that. This is a stray, little random story. This was a stray kitten my wife's sister found. She got in a car one morning to go to work and she heard some meowing under the car, looking around, couldn't find it, and it was in the engine compartment. So she was like, oh my god. So we have 2 cats here. She can't keep them because her husband's allergic, or I think her kids are allergic and her husband just hates cats. So you know, she bought it here, so now we have 3 cats. So I'm just going to open it up now, looking at what I'm doing. So I'm going to do, I've done one, it's gone in a bit deeper. I'm just going to double check it's okay for my my claws. But basically, I think people will know the way I work now. I'm just constantly checking the stone and the work I'm doing. Yeah, that's plenty. Hang on, let me hold it in a better position. Yeah, that's plenty. That's almost too much. So I've got to be careful about opening them up. I can open them up, but without going deeper. But I know that now because I just checked it after the first one. So it's always worth checking what you're doing compared to the stone, so you understand the correct way to proceed. So anyway, I won't show you anymore. It's probably going to get boring just watching me phrasing stuff out. So I've marked them out, I've phrased them, just opening up those to the correct scoop for the claw now. That's what I'm doing. So now we're ready to do the U-shaped claws. I'm going to use these pliers, half flat, half round nose. Like I said before, I want the claws straight and parallel opposite each other. So the U is going to be quite long. I'll tell you why in a minute. I don't really know the measurements yet, so I'm going to do one, get it looking how I think is correct, and then I'll tell you exactly what it is I did to get it. To try and understand what I need to do before I start bending wire up wrong, just putting the stone back in the bezel, and then I'm going to sort of guess sort of how long I want the claws above the stone. About that much should be plenty. By correct curvature, I mean you turn it up to like a 180-degree bend, and then that distance between them is correct for going in these slots. It's a little bit adjustable. It's just my first guess. It was quite a good guess by the looks of it. Almost spot on, perhaps a little bit loose. But yeah, basically you want that sitting there nicely with the sides parallel opposite each other. That was wrong. It's not long enough straight on there, so I'm starting that again. I'll get it right. I want to get it right myself before I start telling you exactly what to do. So I need that much straight over the top. I held it about there last time. We need about that much. be careful when you're bending these, the wire doesn't scissor too much. It's difficult to get it perfect. It's not the end of the world if it is a bit scissors, but it just gives you an extra bit of work to tweak it. And it's better just to bend it nicely flat rather than start twisting it about and hammering it flat and stuff afterwards. So I tried again, left that a bit longer this time. Just to clarify what I'm on about, because I do worry I can't explain things very well. See, that's in the middle, yeah, and then above it and below it, there's a decent amount of flat. So minimum 4 mil, 4.5 mil, so I've got loads there. So you've got flat even on the underside. It's straight, and then a curve. So I need 2 of those. So when you've got 2 of these, you need to solder them in. So I'm just putting my bezel in there, making sure I can line it up straight into position, and I'm checking the claws. I can see mine is scissoring a little bit. You can see that one's leaning that way compared to the one behind it, just a little bit. I could probably get away with that, but I can see it now, and it's such an easy fix to just tweak it back a little bit. So anyway, I'm just aligning them up, sort of going through the sort of giving it a trial of soldering in position. I can see it can improve a little bit, so I'm just going to do that. And then I'll be putting it back in that position and soldering it probably with, I might try hard solder again. Because when you've got 4 claws on there, it needs to be soldered onto the rings. I might leave medium or easy for that. So anyway, yeah, basically still more solders to do with the claws on there, so you might want to go for at least medium, perhaps hard. So just while it was in my hands, holding it in tweezers, I made sure it was lined up nicely, just fluxing it. I do flux both joins because when you burn it on, it kind of acts like a glue, doesn't it? It sort of sets it in place. Not by much, but it's going to help. You know, silver, it's got a little bit of tension on it, because, you know, I squeezed it down. There was a chance, as it softens up, it might just open up a little bit and that falls out of position. So having flux on both, even though I'm only planning on doing 1 solder at a time, might help a little mistake not happen. And then I'm gonna, I mean, that's too much solder, but I kind of like the fact there's too much rather than not enough. Like, I'm going for medium, by the way, as well. I just trust it more to flood properly. If I flood hard in, it doesn't go everywhere I need it to, and then I've got to heat it up and try and pull it across. Such a liability with my hard solder, because it's just it's so close to the melting temperature of the metal. A bit of a liability. So look, I'm always quick to pull the flame away. Okay, that seems quite good. Looking on top, looking underneath, down the sides, I'm confident that is soldered everywhere it needs to. And then this side's already fluxed. I'm going to put in the acid. Sometimes you can just do the next one, but it's silver, you know, oxidizes quite a lot, so I just double check it's clean, because a thin bit of silver like that, if it's not soldering and you're pushing a little bit more with the heat, that's when you make a mistake and you accidentally melt things. Don't grab the claw. It's so sketchy. It has actually soldered alright. I was going to pull it this way a little bit more. Okay. Here we go. Right, that was done. Bit of sketchy soldering there. It's not always necessary, but in this instance, I want to keep those 2 connected with that U. I don't want to cut them apart just so I can put that on the same way. So to leave them as they are, just put that on from the other side. It's kind of useful having those first 2 there, because they can help you line things up nicely. So all your gaps should be like nice and parallel and stuff, if those are straight. So anyway, basically same again, just be careful to line it up nicely, make sure your claws are not scissored, because that's going to make it impossible to line them up nice. So now we got something a bit like this. We got to separate the take the ends off, the hoop ends, and I don't recommend. At the same time, you can do it, you can get away with it, something this size, but these snippers, they don't really cut through, they don't slice through metal, they just sort of push it, force it down to a point and then separate it. So something like that, you snip through it, there's a chance it may just come open a little bit, which will ruin your nice parallel lines. Something as big as that, it's fine. Also, you can eliminate that by going across two at the same time, kind of a bit safer. But I just like always practicing the sort of best technique for every scenario. So I'm gonna thread my saw blade through, cut one from the inside, and then just snip off the other side. Quite catchy, this saw blade. Hey. There we go. That was hazardous. When you snip, consider which way the bit of metal is going to fly. You don't want it going in your face. You don't want to lose it either, so I always try and get things to go in the skin. Anyway, whatever you want to do, just cut off the loops. So you should have something like that now. It's slightly excessively long, probably got 2 mil too much. It's better too much than too little, I guess. So now I got this. Like I said at the start, this is sort of experimental, so I'm sort of eking forward, like trying to figure out the best thing to advise and what exactly to do myself. So now I've got this, I'm thinking I'm going to clean it up. I've got a rubber wheel, it's going to tidy up the solder joints a little bit. I'll get a paper disc, flatten the ends. And yeah, if you're making one, if you're doing this, you're really making something to finish a ring, it's probably good to get it all cleaned up and polished now, because it's going to be much easier before claws are bent under and there's joints to the shank and stuff. So it's a good opportunity to clean it up now. I have actually made this a little bit small for my stone. I'll still be able to set it, but it should have been a touch bigger. This is where I'm out of practice here. I'm not really under pressure to make things correctly first attempt, so I do work slightly carelessly compared to when I was an employed jeweller. If you work like that for a few years, as I have now since I've been in Japan, things like this are happening. So my ability to put things together is still there, but actually doing them correctly for specific stones appears to have slipped a little bit today. Clean this up, just looking, these looked a bit shorter than what I initially thought I needed, but I think I said 4.5. I think maybe more like 4 is enough, either side of the bezel. And yeah, I wanted to get to this stage because that cleaned up, if made nicely, could be something you could cast. So I'm sort of making this video with it in mind, as you could convert any wedding band into a single stone, but we're making this to go on top. But you could just be making wedding rings like this anyway. It's sort of a quick, easy way. And you could do this, if you made one nicely, got it all cleaned up nicely, you could get that cast and have loads of them. Obviously it's just for setting the same size stone or very, very similar size stone. Yeah, you could get that cast, and then while it's all open, you can clean it up easily and get it all polished. And then with your wedding ring, you can make a load of wedding rings like this. Just start putting them together. So that's why I wanted to get it to this stage and show you that first of all, because it is something, a way you could have a load of castings prepared for just banging out a load of single stones. Okay, next we're going to fold 4 of these prongs on one side down across and then meeting in the middle. So to do that without distorting it, if you've got any like setters, jet set, heat form stuff, might be worth setting 1/2 in, and then you can really easily do this, but I like not using that stuff where possible. So this is one of my ball punches. That's a little bit loose on there, but it's quite a good fit, so I can just hold that on there. It's going to stop it getting too distorted. Just push it against my peg and then get a pusher. There was some sort of flat pusher. Start pushing them across. Just go directly to the middle. I'm going to do opposites as well, because there is a chance you might scissor them accidentally. You don't want to do that. You just want the opposite one goes straight to the other one and then meeting in the middle. Right, I'm going to push them to there so they're not quite touching. Don't know if you can see that. They're not touching, and then these two should go the same, so there should be like a little square hole in the middle of them. Do you know what I mean? So they're all equally pushed over, same angle, same distance, and it'll leave a little space in the middle. If you can think of a better way to hold it, a better tool, a better technique, whatever, by all means try it. That's all part of the fun, I think, of making stuff. Once you've got the basics down, like you can use pliers, you can cut around corners, you can cut in a straight line, use your saw, whatever way you want. Use your phrases, you can drill, you can solder. You've got all the basics down and you're free to experiment and do what you want. That's what I find fun. That's why I wanted to try this as an idea I hadn't done before. I thought it might be a quick, easy way to come up with a single stone ring. Okay, they're not perfect, but I've done enough to show you and explain what I'm aiming for. So can you see I've pushed them down a little bit out of the line, those two, top and bottom. But yeah, joining them up so they meet in the middle. I'm going to push them down a little bit more so they touch. And then I'll think what to do. I might, I won't put solder on. We can just put like a ball burr or drill perhaps, probably a ball burr, some sort of phrase, down through the middle. Flame one, probably best. Just to open them up, get rid of that metal that's touching in the middle, and then push down a little bit more because they're touching, but it's still a bit long. And what I'm doing, I'm comparing what I'm aiming for. I'm aiming for that to be soldered onto the shank, and then these to be touching as they hit the side there. I don't want them going under the side, so they've got to be quite short, I guess. So they are a little bit long now, but that's good. We've got room to maneuver. We can do this and get it really neat and perfect. Just cut them down and adjust them as they need to be until they finish correct height. Okay, what I decided to do is get quite a thick saw blade. This is a 330, I think. It's quite a chunky saw blade, and I'm just going to cut through it. I think I just said I was going to put like some sort of burr down the middle. I don't think that's the best idea. I'm going to cut it out. I want a straight hole coming up through in between the claws. And what was I thinking? Normally I'll just use a cut-off disc and just open it up, but I appreciate not everybody has those, so I want to do it with my saw blade just so you don't feel like stuck. You can't get past this stage because you don't have that specific tool. So basically I've threaded that through. I'm just going to chop straight down the middle. Just like that. There's not a lot of metal has to come out. Turn it around 90 degrees, do the other side as well. And then that should open it up a little bit. Should create a gap where I can close it down more. So can you see what I've done there? Put saw blade in one way and then the other way. So I've got that gap. So I can close that down more, and that obviously with the cuts being straight, it's created little triangles which click together much nicer. So when we add a bit of solder, they're already joined up much nicer. So I pushed it down a bit, I cut it through again, pushed it down a bit, and now here we are at this stage. When I'm making these full instructional guides, I always get ideas for another one. Like that is quite a good way to make an earring though. If that's all polished out nicely, that'd be quite nice. All we've got to do is put a post on that. That's quite a quick, easy earring to make. Anyway, so now I'm sort of comparing it to the side. It still needs to come down a little bit. So I'm going to leave them like this. We'll just open them up now so that can slot in and actually touch the bottom of the bezel. So it's going on there like that. Sorry, it's going on there like that. So my shank is about 1.6-ish wide. We're going to be taking shank's going across it like that, so I've got to take that much out. So I like having that measurement so I can really see it and envisage what I'm going to cut out. It might even be worth setting dividers or just using this, just putting a couple of marks across the centre so you know you don't cut out too much. Oh, come on. I don't know if you can see that. I can't get it to focus. Okay, right, anyway, it's not going to focus. Don't know if you can see that. There's two little lines either side. What I did, I have these I set them just below what I need, just so if I cut up to the line, it's still not too far. Just scratched across it like that. So I've got two lines there, so I know what to cut. So now I'm going to go back to a very thin saw blade, a very thin, accurate one, and then carefully chop out in between those lines. Just cut up to the line, and then I'll use paper disc or some needle file just to pull it out nice and straight. Even if I went over that line, it's not the end of the day. You can push the claws about a little bit anyway to get them to fit nicely. Alright, be very careful when you're going through. You don't want to go all the way through and then jump and then saw and then put a nick in your bezel. So one way I'm going to help myself avoid that is basically have the blade already touching my bench peg. See that? It's like sawing the peg and my metalwork. There you go. So it went through. Would have jumped and hit, but it was on there, so I rescued it. There we go. Check that. Not enough. Perfect. I've got space to paper disc it back and get it to fit nicely. Just to show you what happened exactly. I cut out that space. And then once I open it up, that will be able to slide up in there. I'm just paper disking it, but you could totally do this with a needle file pretty easily. One thing I would just recommend is make sure you're going nice and horizontal. To your claws go down to V's, yeah, you want to make sure you're going straight across so those V's are not weird positions once it's opened up enough. And then also being careful to keep my lines nice and vertical because they're joined onto a flat-sided shank. So it's all got to slide on there nicely with no gaps. See that? Cut that out. That now goes over there. But that shank needs to touch under the bezel, so that's where it's going to solder onto. But these are still sticking out above that, which I knew was going to happen. I thought there was going to be more of a gap in the middle, and then we'll just push them together. It's looking like the gap's not as big, so we're going to literally have to cut that gap bigger, and then we can just fold them together enough until they join onto the shank without sticking over the edge. So looking at this collet now, I really like it. I think I'm going to do another instructional guide, but we will make a... So I'm looking at this collet, I really like it. I think I'm going to do another full instructional guide, but with a maybe slightly more chunky, rounded bezel, and we'll do a pair of earrings or something with it. I don't know, I'll keep it in mind. But as for this, I'm sort of thinking, like, I can cut through the middle, just do the same again, but I might have to do it like 3-4 times to get it down on the shank. So what I'm thinking, instead of keep doing that and fighting that battle, I might just raise it up a little bit. See what I'm doing there? Just, I originally planned for that to join onto that, but I think we should have enough strength. There's quite a large flat of metal there. This should be strong. The entire time I've been making this today, I've planned for the shank to be joined onto that bezel. It's because I wanted to be able to convert a wedding ring, which we are still doing, but I just imagined that being soldered onto that and then those V's going on the side, but it's not that much distance. I think if you had quite a tall bezel, it might work a bit easier, but what I'm thinking now, because there's quite a wide flat, that's quite strong soldered on there. I'm thinking we'll just raise it up a little bit, and then by doing that, it creates a gap under that bezel. It looks quite nice. Let's see if we can do it, holding on to it. I think it looks quite nice, having a bit of a gap under there. I might cut through it once more, just lower it a little bit. I think it's better than that. Yeah, let's do that, let's raise it up a little bit. So I am going to shorten the claws a little bit more, but we are basically going to end up with a ring a bit like that now, which is nicer, I like that. So I told you this is experimental, keeping the design fluid. So it's really gently holding in position. It's not perfect, I still need to push it, looking a bit closer, but it's holding there. And then I think that's much nicer, having a little bit of a gap under it. It's better for the stone as well, having a bit more, allowing light to access it around under the stone as well, helps it look its best. So yeah, that's what we're going to do. I think that's about ready to go now. I sort of like the claws, I kind of like the distance of the gap, and the claws are looking quite neat and nice, the way the angles they're curving compared to the verticals of the sides and the horizontals of the bezel. Quite liking the design, sort of flowing quite well. So I'm putting the collet onto the shank now. Last chance to get the shank all papered nicely or polished nicely if you're taking it that far. It's ideal if the gap you put in it just matches nicely the ring width, so then it just slots in position and then just holds there, which is what I've got. It's not really strong, got to be careful with it, but it does hold in position. That's a massive help. That's very, very helpful. So I just went around my collet as well, the rubber wheel, just tidying up the solder joins, a bit more attention to detail. Yeah, ready to go. Now it's just simply, I've just got to hold it in front of me, just make sure it's all straight and nice, and looking at it from the side as well, make sure it's not tilting. Good to go. So I've applied a bit of solder just there, put it on gently with just the wet bristles of my brush, just got it on there. I flooded, went under that claw more than that one. Okay, that's good, but only on one side. I need to add a little bit more and try and get it to flood under this claw. So that's cool. Basically, you saw what I did, just go in slowly. It's out of focus again, I'm sorry. Yeah, I just soldered that, and the solder flooded that side a bit more than the right side. So it's about the right amount of solder, so I'm going to add a little bit more and just try and get it to flood there a little bit. So I'll be holding the flame this side because the solder floods towards the heat. So that's what I've got to do. So I'm not going to touch it or move it, I'm just going to try and get more solder on there to flood. Okay. I'm going to have my camera zoomed out a little bit, not as close as I would like because it seems to go out of focus today quite easily. There we go, there we go, there we go. That's scary. Right, that is proper soldered on one side. Let the tweezers cool down, let that cool down a bit, put in the acid and have a closer look. So out the acid, having a close look. Initially I thought there's too much solder, a bit of a lump on the side, but it hasn't flooded up the middle. So I need to reflood it basically. But before I do that, I may as well, as it's now joined to the shank, I may as well just turn it over and do the other side, get that solder properly, and then return to the first one and reflood it. Hopefully it evens out a little bit. There's a bit of a lump on one side. It's nice when there's a bit of heat on the piece, because when you're when you're attaching a bit of solder with your brush, it grabs that and comes off your brush. It doesn't work every time, as you just saw. So I want the solder there on that corner towards me. Not perfect position, but I think it's okay. Enough solder. Did actually look like it worked really well. I'm going to leave it. Looks like it might need a little bit more. Let me flood the other side first and then see how I feel. Okay, so one side was slightly over soldered and the other side was slightly under soldered. So I just added a bit more to the slightly under soldered one and flooded it in. It's not bad. I just wish there was slightly less on both of them, but it's okay. After polishing and stuff, I can touch with a rubber wheel. I can tidy that up quite well. So that is it. That's kind of finished. I'm going to buff it up, tidy it up a little bit more, and yeah, we'll try and get the stone in. Alright, bit of an interruption. It's been a few days since I last touched this ring, so let's do the setting. Looking at it now, I've got no problems with how it's made, but I remember it was just a touch too small, really. Not too small, but smaller than I would have liked to have made it, but being a bit of a rubbish jeweller. So I'm going to have to open these claws up a little bit more than I would like. So I'm starting off, I quite like using these because they're obviously it's circular. or spherical I should say, that pushes the claws out evenly. Just obviously go down the middle so they're all pushing out even, same as each other. And I may likely gonna have to bend the claws back with pliers, which you'd have to do anyway, but I'm expecting to have to do it a bit more than normal. So just seeing exactly how my stone wants to sit. Okay, it'll be alright. I'll just basically, it'll go in there, it'll be fine. Just I'm gonna have to cut the claws back a little bit more than I would like. Normally I'd aim for like a third, you know, like cutting a groove on the inside of the claw. Like a third is quite a nice amount, because then you leave a lot of strength on the outside of the claw. Probably gonna have to go half, maybe beyond half on these. So it takes the strength out of the claws, which means if someone's wearing it, claws more likely to get pulled back and come off even. So anyway, I'll put that heat form stuff in there to secure the shape of the ring, give it a bit of stability. I'm just going to bend these back. I like bending one and then I bend the opposite one and then look at them from the side, and then I bend in them the same amount. Also, doing this job, I've always wanted to do, and I've never done it, is round off, like a pair of pliers, just round off one of the sharp edges, because you pull in them back and you always get a little line on the outside of your claw, like a little sharp dig mark where that corner goes in. So as these are my cheap sort of, well, my normal ones are these, they're both cheap ones, but these are got less sentimental value. So I'm actually going to round these off now and see if it works. I'll literally just take the inside corner off. Just a bit, just to take it's just the sharpness that digs into the claw. So I'm expecting this to give it kinder on the outside of the claw. I haven't really changed them that much, still use them like normal look. Just got to keep it in mind, let me put a black dot. Just to keep it in mind that I did work on one side. Just put a black X on one side. Okay, let's see if it helps. This one hasn't got much of a mark on it. I mean, I had already put marks on them, they don't really appear to have got any worse. You can still see where it's pushed on the pliers, but I don't think it's cutting into them as much anymore. So yeah, it does help. It's not perfect, but it helped a little bit. Anyway, let's try my stone again. I bent those out quite a lot. So I had to bend these claws right back, look. So anyway, it's sat down there now, it's just sitting on the girdle, and then the point of the stone is just about to hit that bit of shank underneath it. So I'm happy to drill into that little bit if I need to, but I don't think I'll need to. But anyway, the stone is now low enough where I can see where I need to cut for the claws. So I'm gonna get my dividers and then, well, just anything, I'll literally have the stone in there. You can use dividers to measure down from the tops of the claws. I just like having a stone in there and put a little mark on the side, and then I'll secure that line with something a bit more when I take the stone back out. So I've just got this little sharp thing. Just going to go around it now, put a little mark on the claw where the girdle hits as the stone is sat flat. Make sure you're careful to make sure it's horizontal and how you want it to be set. Yeah, mark on the claw exactly where you're going to cut, so I'm just going to do that now. So you can just look at the marks you've got on the side, if you can see clearly, if you've got magnification, great. And then just go straight to your cut-in, like diamond set-in burr, and then cut a groove on that. But because I'm self-taught setting, I'm still learning, so what I did last time, which I found quite helpful, I just lined up a thin saw blade on my mark. I just started off with a little nick in all of them. Why this worked for me, sometimes with these burrs, you don't always see that because you only want to cut where the stone's sitting, it's easy to make a mistake and just cut a bit too far around the side. If you start off with a little saw cut, it's very easy just to cut from the middle outwards, so you only phrase in where your saw cut is. You know if you're going over the edge of it, you'll come around the side of the claw. So that's another reason why I liked starting off with this saw blade. It helped me phrase it more correctly, not only in the correct position, but lost all the risk of going around the side accidentally. So anyway, I'm doing this now. Just a little bit, just to start it off. I've got to get in the habit of using these. One of my awesome patrons bought these for me as a gift, sent them to me. Thank you very much, Angie. Yeah, they came with different power magnifications. ×2, ×2.5, but just making me all nauseous. It's like if you put someone else's glasses on, everything looks all wobbly and weird and you feel dizzy. It was making me feel sick using them, but these are magnifying just 1.5 and they're fine. I can use these now. There's like a nice range of focal point, and they don't make me feel sick using them. So I want to get in the habit of using these more often. I'm so used to not having magnification, I don't always think of it. But anyway, yeah, they are helpful. It's just a little bit. It was nice to have a torch as well on the front. But yeah, they do help. So I'm just locking that in my groove now. Simply put a little cut in there. I was going to start off again, because like I say, I'm teaching myself setting. Still a little bit cautious. So I just cut a little bit, check the stone. I will phrase into it a little bit, check the stone, and then proceed like that. But I imagine if you've got experience, you can just look at it, you know how much to bend the claws, you know exactly the best tool, cut into it a perfect amount, work really fast, really well. I'm not there yet. So what I'm going to do is, I'm liking the idea of it going a bit lower. I think I can get away with it with, I've already put cuts in the claws, but I think I can bring them down a little bit, and I need to cut out the edge off that inner side of the bezel. So I've got these, I'm just going to find a big-ish one to go in there, and then hopefully the point of the stone goes down on top of that shank, and just is sat on the metal, and then it's sat on the bezel nice and securely as well. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to find one of these, open it up. Just want the stone to drop down a little bit. Just it's good practice for me as well, controlling how a stone sits in the setting, making these minute adjustments to finish things off exactly how you want them to finish. Yeah, so a little bit more fiddling about, and then hopefully you start pushing the claws over. Okay, so I'm going to push these claws over. Notice, by the way, I'm just holding it in my hand. Something like this, where I can just sort of carefully push the claws about. I find having them in ring clamps, or those setting ball things, can be a bit of a hindrance sometimes. I like being able to just pick it up and quickly move it around and see around it. So I like to do as much as I can in my hands. That's what we're doing now. I'm looking from the side, I'm just going to squeeze up the claws. Trying to get them to turn up. Trying to get them to straighten up the claws the same amount each time. So that might mean with these pliers, sort of squeeze them like that, and then you squeeze them like that, just so you can get the opposite claws coming up the same. Okay, just looking at this magnification, it's like I overly beat up these claws. It's alright for you, like if you're learning to set, you just get to practice your setting. Because I've got this YouTube channel, it's like I'm obliged to show everyone my dodgy craftsmanship. So yeah, I need to straighten these claws up a little bit. I did just paper around them. So as for working on the tops of these claws to finish them off nicely, here's a trick I'm doing for the first time, and I learned it from a video on a channel, Goldsmith's Workshop Secrets. A guy called Yako the jeweler. Thank you, Yako, I like this technique. So what you do is you get like a cone shape abrasive rubber thing, and on the end, what I did is I flattened the end, and then just with an old ball burr, I just touched the end in there. So now I've got, going to a point, there's a little scoop in there. It's like a little concave circular scoop, and that, you can work on the top of your claws, and you get them buffed back. So there's no very fine lines, so very easy to polish from this this technique. Because these cup burrs I was just using, they grind the metal down really well, but they are very liney and scratchy looking. So it's nice to be able to do this quickly and easily, keeping that perfectly round top. just working on it a little bit, just getting them a bit smoother, and then from that you can polish them really nicely. So this is a good little trick. Thank you, Yakko. Check out his channel. Maybe I'll put a link to it on the screen. It's worth seeing. He's clearly an experienced jeweler, and he's doing the same as me, sharing all his little tips and tricks. So it's useful. So yeah, I appreciate when people doing what I'm doing and helping me the way I'm trying to help other people. So yeah, there you go, coming to a finish. I wasn't gonna polish this, but as I've worked on the claws more than I thought I was going to, I'm gonna quickly bristle brush it and then hopefully tidy it up a little bit. I was just doing a little bit of polishing with the bristle brushes. Got my face mask on, Fauci, right mate? Yeah, these little, I call these chimney sweeps. These are really good because they're quite, I should do a video specifically on these because there's different techniques and different angles I use for different shapes that you're polishing on the metal, like flat surfaces and claws and stuff. You can do a few tricks with these. So these are quite good. They're quite, you've got to be careful with them because they do cut into the metal quite a lot. So you use them sort of sideways more rather than going straight onto the metal. They're quite good up and down claws and stuff. Start off with that. Then what do they do? One of these, pencil bristle brush. I think they're called in the catalogue, Cookson's catalogue. They're good on directly going down tops of the claws and then just carefully down on that V section on the side. I was touching it with that. So now I'm about to go to a soft chimney sweep with a bit of green. Even though I complained about this polish in the past, I do actually still prefer using this grease, triply grease on the bristle brushes. I don't know why, I just feel like it works better on these smaller bristles. So let's just brighten it up now. Spin it on that. Be careful of the dust going in your face. So this should brighten it up, and I have actually still got a bit of a nick on the side, the outside of my claw. That would have to be removed if I was really making a piece of jewellery. But as always, like my videos, I hope I don't come across as too slapdash when it comes to finishing things, but I do rarely finish things like fully polished, ready to go as if it was being ready, prepared for a customer. It's because my videos and this whole channel is about just the making, just getting you to be able to actually produce it by hand. But for the actual final polishing, finishing techniques, don't often include that on my videos because there's an element of my videos go on too long as they do. So yeah, I am going to sort of help this one out because I worked on the claws more than I thought I was going to. So that's why I wanted to go to the bristle brushes. So we're using these. They're good on the, I'm sort of concentrating on the roundness of the claws. You'll be careful when you're going on flat surfaces, you don't want to cut into them. So always moving it on those, you can get away with it. And then that, obviously it sprays loads of dust as you apply that to the brush, so make sure it's not going directly into your face. Just working around it. It's important to keep these moving and hit things from different angles all the time. And concentrate on just one piece at a time. It's not just a generic thing. I'm working on that little bezel side, then I'm working on the solder joint down the side, working on the claw, that section of the claw, that section of the claw, going across both claws, getting in the V, like really specific about where I'm putting the brush and the angle, the speed I'm spinning it, how much I'm moving it about, left, right, up, down, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, just got to go over everything, like, but concentrating on one small area at a time. So that's just my little bit of advice about polishing, as I'm doing some polishing. So I'm not going mad on this, I'm just brightening it up a little bit. So I'll continue with it. I won't even bother doing the shank, but just to brighten it up and call it finished, and like at least it's polished, then I can take a nice photo of it for the YouTube thumbnail. But there you go, I do actually quite like this ring. But anyway, I'll finish it off and then we'll have a close look at it. So there you go, what a nice little ring. Classic sort of engagement ring design, single stone ring. Quick and easy to make, especially if you do like what I said when I was making the video. If you start off with that bezel and the four straight claws, if you get that cast, I say straight because it allows you to polish it before you fold the bottom up into a V. You can polish it underneath the bezel, get the sort of inner edge of the claws and stuff all nice and polished. Then you fold it up to a V, then solder it, and then cut it open to whatever ring you've got. So you sort of, it's a good starting point to customize it to whatever it needs to be for a specific ring. So there is an opportunity here to convert old rings. Someone's got an old sort of wedding band they've been wearing. I mean, maybe they've got a wedding band, they got divorced, they want to do something with a wedding band, they want to make their own engagement ring for the next person. I don't really know what the scenario would be, but let's just say someone's got an old ring they want to do something with. You can convert it to a single stone quite easily, and I did have to drill mine out a little bit. I wanted to lower my stone, but that meant the point of the stone was touching the metal. I did actually over drill it a little bit. I don't know if you can see that in there. It's didn't have to do as much as I did. If I just touched it with a fine drill would have been enough. But yeah, totally possible. Even this big carat stone, a 6.5mm stone, doesn't sit too high on top of that sort of size, that sort of depth wedding ring. I could have got away with just having that piece on there without it drilled at all, which means someone could do that to a ring and you could take it off and do something else with the ring as well. So a reversible modification, if that's a selling point for someone. Yeah, you don't have to actually drill into a ring or do anything to it. You just solder in those claws on the side basically, and that's it. And I think that's pretty strong on there. So there you go, bit of experiment, sort of fun to do. Has potential. You could do multiple stones, different size either side of it. Could do a 3-stone like this. I would like to see it. Maybe it's just the way I'm used to making rings, or just what I'm used to, design I'm used to seeing. Either split shoulder would work well, or just going taller as it reaches the stone set down the side. There's potential, there's a proper way to make a ring basically. I sort of have it in mind as it being a bit of a quick, easy way, but it really is a proper bit of diamond mounting. It's not a bodged single stone, is it? It's a proper ring. So yeah, potential here. I recommend it, and maybe try it with 6 claws, or I don't know, you can play with it, do the design, whatever. Once you've done this, you're sort of armed with your own ability to do what you want with the design. So there you go. Single stone. It's another way to make one.